Hello, Dog Pound. This is the Oracle Speaks. I am your host, the Village Elliot. I will tell you about the past, present, and future of your Cleveland Browns. And specifically, I have an agenda item that demands immediate attention. This assumes that Joe Flacco will be the starting quarterback for the Browns against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. That announcement has not yet been made, but at the time that this broadcast is being made, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is still in the concussion protocol, so it's looking like Joe Flacco may have to go a second time. But what kind of got me bent out of shape last week was a couple things. I felt like Coach fell in love with Joe Flacco too quickly. The man only had a week of practice before he had to actually play in the game. I think he needs more time. The team needs more time. The receivers need more time. It's going to get better for Flacco the longer he plays, but he's still operating on just a little bit of time with the Cleveland Browns. He did not have training camp, did not have any game reps, and only a week or two of practice. That's not cool. So the running game just wasn't used very much against the Rams. Even though Jerome Ford gained yards against that team, they just didn't give him very many carries. I think he had 9 carries, and Kareem Hunt had 7. They both made some yards against the Rams, and they just didn't use the running game. The thought was that the Rams were just loading up against the run and that they were going to be unstoppable, and there was no chance of winning just because of the defenses that were being presented, where they were using 8 and even 9 men in the box. I think there's a counter to that. There's an old axiom in football that you gotta make the other team stop you. You can't just give up and assume that the other team can beat you. I want to see them actually stop the running game rather than us just say that, well, we can't run against this team. We're going to have to pass and pass and pass. 44 times is a very high number for any quarterback, and especially a guy that's been with a team for a week. I don't care if he is a veteran who's played I don't know what it is, 14, 15 years in the NFL, and he's got a Super Bowl ring to show for it. Been in many playoff games, beating the brains out of the Cleveland Browns many a time. But the lack of practice, both the quarterback with the rest of the team and the rest of the team with the quarterback, it showed. After watching the first half, the Rams figured out what he could do and what he couldn't do, and they were able to provide a defense against that in the second half. It wasn't effective, really. They needed to have a more effective running game. So how do you do that? Well, whatever happened to Nick Harris? Nick Harris is the third tight end in some formations, and he's the fullback in some others. But against the Rams, where you really needed to use the running game, he had only 3 snaps. Pardon, not touches, but 3 snaps. Remember, he's a blocking back as a fullback, which is common these days. Fullback does not run the ball, does not usually catch the ball out of the backfield, although I suppose they have some trick plays here and there that Nick might touch the ball someday, but basically he's a blocking back. That is a way that you can, see if our big guys can beat their big guys. And I think the Browns should try that and see if they can be stopped. And with that, I want to have a commercial break. And I want to tell you first about Free Sound Music. That's the company that provides the introduction music for this broadcast. It's a free service, it's royalty free, uh, doesn't cost anything, it's free to use. They have a voluntary donation, which I gladly pay, throw them a few dollars in order to use that music. And it's really great for podcasts. So I'll just throw that out there. And let me pause for Johnny Cleveland and the boys to add some commercials and make some revenue for the show. And thank you, everyone, for all the support that you've been giving us. Okay, and we are back. And so, yeah, I want to see. My feeling is that the Browns lack identity on offense. I don't see how they can win if they are a mad passing team that throws the ball 44 times a game. I don't think it's going to end well. I think that the teams now, the other teams, have accumulated some film on Joe Flacco. They know what plays the Browns will run against them, at least to an extent. Joe might have learned some new plays this week, but basically they know what he's going to do and how the Browns are going to come at them. They will game plan against Joe Flacco, and I think that it's just not going to work out well if they continue to put the ball in the air 44 times. Now, I think they did have success with Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt on the ground. I don't know why they couldn't find more carries than 9 and 7, respectively. I didn't think that was enough. But I also think that they should have tried more plays with the fullback just to see what would happen. I think that with Nick Harris, it's our big guys against their big guys, man against man, and let's just see if they can stop it or not. Make them prove that they can stop the heavy jumbo set. Don't just assume that it won't work and that they can always stop it and that it'll never gain more than 5 yards or whatever. Prove it. I think the Browns need to be a team that can gain yards on the ground, and that they might very well be better than the Jacksonville Jaguars if they bulk up and put in an extra blocker. That might be enough to tip the scales in their favor. This is, not what most of the NFL teams do. Very few have a fullback anymore, but I think it's something that they need to try in order to help alleviate the burden from Joe Flacco. I just don't see how the Browns can win by having our quarterback throw more passes than the other team's quarterback. I think it's going to result in turnovers and sacks, and it's just not going to be a good thing. Now, the longer it goes, the more experience that Flacco has with the Browns, game by game, I think he'll get better. But in his second game, with 3 weeks of practice, 3 weeks to get to know the wide receivers, the tight ends, the blocking patterns established by the offensive lines, he probably knows 20 or 30 plays cold from the playbook. That may not be enough. And then also, how many plays does the offense know with the new quarterback? How well do the receivers know their responsibilities now with Joe Flacco compared to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, compared to Deshaun Watson, compared to PJ Walker? These players are not quite interchangeable. This is not fantasy football where you just pick up a quarterback, stick him in the lineup, and have him perform on the first week. This is real life where it takes real people actual time to get used to one another. And I just am not enthusiastic about expecting instant results from a quarterback that hasn't played against real competition for more than a year, even though I'm sure that Joe Flacco still has it. I think he proved that. I said this a few times. Last season, when he played against the Cleveland Browns, he threw for over 300 yards and he brought the New York Jets, the New York Jets that don't know anything about playing offense, those New York Jets came from behind and snatched a victory away from the Cleveland Browns. And, that one really stung, but it proved that Joe Flacco does have the ability to throw for a bunch of yards once he's got things figured out. I don't know that he's really got it figured out just by game 2 of his Cleveland Browns career. I think that's asking an awful lot. I think that they need to find ways to develop the run and use that more effectively, get the ball into the hands of the running backs, short passes. I do not think that this team is going to win by trickery, trick plays, taking chances. I think that this is still a defensive team that will win by winning the turnover battle, hanging on to the football on offense, and causing turnovers on defense. Now, I think there's an open question about how strong the defense still is after receiving its share of injuries. And in particular, when you want to play man-to-man on defense, you better have some pretty good players on your starting 11, because where there's a weak spot, the opposing team will find it. And right now, the Browns are not as strong as they were at the beginning of the season. So I think there is somewhat of a shift that the Browns are not as dominant defensively as they were. Nevertheless, the defense is stronger than the Cleveland offense, and the game should be managed with that in mind. Minimize turnovers. Don't take these chances that risk additional turnovers for the offense. Don't rely on trick plays and long bombs and surprise double reverse handoffs and stuff like that. Those kind of plays will lose games. We need to keep things simple. See if brute force will work. I think let's use that fullback. Let's use 2 tight ends. Let's see if the Jacksonville Jaguars can actually stop the jumbo offense. Let's not give up on it before we even test it. This, again, I'll go back to the old axiom: make them stop it. Don't just give up on it because you think it won't work. Prove that they can stop the jumbo offense. And if they can't, and especially in the second half, when the defenses get tired out a little bit, this could be a very effective weapon for the Browns. And I think using the fullback only for 3 plays the entire game, when you've got a quarterback that's throwing the ball 44 times after a week of practice, that doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. I think you need to do something to alleviate the stress on Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford. I should say this in a different way. That I think that they need to be able to run the ball. They really need more carries, not fewer, but that they can possibly gain more yards by having the additional big blockers. That's what I mean to say, that they can gain more yards with the big guys up front. Perhaps. We'll see. I mean, the defense will put in its big guys to try to stop it. And some people would say that, you can't have the jumbo offense when it's early downs because it doesn't gain that many yards on first down. And maybe that's true, but I think you need to have the other team prove it to you that they can stop it, not just give up and say that we can't make yards on the ground with the fullback. maybe you can, and you ought to try that experiment. Prove it. Make the other team prove that they can stop your big guys before giving up on them. That's what I have to say. Hope that the Browns will win. They're actually a 1-point favorite now, based on the assumption that Trevor Lawrence is not going to play and that C.J. Beathard is going to be the quarterback for the team. So the franchise quarterback is worth 4 points. They were 3-point favorites. Now they're 1-point underdogs. The Jaguars are. I don't know. Does that make him a franchise quarterback? It's like basically a field goal. I don't know. I have my doubts about whether there is such a thing as a franchise quarterback, really. Yeah, but I think that the backup quarterbacks are capable of executing a good game plan. And as long as they play within themselves, they're a threat to win. We'll see what happens on Sunday. And it should be exciting one way or the other. And I'm looking forward to it. Hope you are too. Have a great weekend, everybody. God bless.